We do that with the kids, yes, I think it's a funny story.
Okay, I got too fast and Prius. I wish I could, but how about your first weekend? All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to a packed house today. How interesting, I love it. I just want to ask everyone before we get going, if you have a cell phone with you, if you could please turn it to vibrate. And if you do need to leave the room for a call, that's fine. Please leave the room and just go all the way outside because we can hear conversation that happens in the hallway there. So welcome and good morning. I'm going to call our District of Tofino regular council meeting to order for 10 a.m. and recognize that we are conducting our business today on Laureate territory. And I will ask first, please, for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. None opposed? Motion is carried. And we have some minutes from the regular council meeting that was held on the 12th of March 2019 for adoption.
Move adoption.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions in the minutes? Seeing none. All in favor? Thank you. And opposed? Motion carried. So we have two people who have signed up for the 2-minute slots for public comment on agenda items. And the first is Willa. I saw you there, Willa. Thank you. Yeah, come on up. This is Willa Bradshaw, and she's here to talk to item 7.3.
Good morning.
Oh, I'm sorry. One moment.
Conflict for
Yeah. Councillor McQuaid is involved in the feast organization on the board, so she is going to declare a conflict for this, and then when we discuss 7.3 as well. Sorry, Willa. Thank you.
That's okay. Good morning, Mayor and Councils. My name is Willa Bradshaw. I live at 360 Campbell Street, and I own a business called Creative Tofino. And together with my husband, we just moved back to Tofino, and we are organizing a feast on May 3rd, 4th, and 5th. I'm here to speak on behalf of the application we'll be submitting for a food hike along Tonquin Trail on May 4th. Basically, the event is a hike interspersed with food samples, live music, acoustic music, and water stations from the old entrance to the Tonquin Park along the trail and exiting out in an industrial way. An important change from the letter in front of you is that the food stations will no longer be on the beach as stated. Instead, all aspects of the food hike are going to be confined to the trail. We're currently working with the district to get our application in order. In it, we've tried to anticipate the eventualities in terms of safety, people moving, sustainability, and impact on the residents and the trail. Our commitment is to leave the trail better than the way we found it. I love Tonquin. It's my favorite beach. I was a townie growing up. This trail, in our plan, we're working with Surfrider to make the event low impact and zero waste. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Could somebody grab Andrea? Oh, thanks.
Responsibility.
All right, so our second speaker who signed up for a 2-minute slot is Jarmo Venalainen, and you are here to speak to 6.2 and 8.2. This is the musical chairs part because I am going to be excusing myself from the discussions today around the Hotel Z application, and my conflict is that my very, very good friends are the next door neighbors, and so I don't want to, I know you're going to speak to that, so I'm now going to leave and ask Councillor Chalmers. This is correct, right? You signed up for 8.2.
What I will say is not a conflict with regards to that.
If you are commenting on the Hotel Z application, then I am going to leave the room.
That's fine.
Okay, so Councillor Chalmers is the acting mayor today, so this is going to happen a couple of times today, and thanks for your patience.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm here to talk about the item that Mayor Osborne left forward, simply to point out that there was a development not so long ago at the end of Campbell Street, which has parking in the front of the property and in the side yard of the property. There was no discussion, and now I find that there is this thorough investigation of making this allowance. And over there, as far as I remember, the COA's letter said it's okay, it's all good. And so I see this huge difference in how things are being handled. That's that comment. The second comment, and I'll be speaking to the budget, is I just wanted to say is I'm not trying to be difficult. I am interested in the community as a whole for everybody. And I am speaking some pretty bold comments about the budget, but they're facts. They're from the British Columbia government website. And I think as we make our plans,
Sorry, Jarmo, you have to speak to comments on the agenda. The budget's not on the agenda.
I did. I am speaking about item number 8.2, I believe.
Yeah, it's delegation.
Pardon?
This here is a delegate. 8.2.
Isn't this?
8.2 is
Is a development.
6.2. I wrote them both down.
Sorry. Is that, okay,
The subject matter is,
okay.
so I just lost like 30 seconds there. Am I kiboshed?
Reset the clock like basketball.
I'm really...
You can just continue.
All right, well, thank you. So the point that I'm trying to make is I'm not trying to be, you know, somebody's pain in the butt or something like that. I just want us collectively as a community to understand where we are and where we're going. The thing that I found extremely flabbergasting is that, you know, we're the third highest municipal taxation in all of British Columbia, and the only other two that are higher are ski resorts, Sun Peaks and Whistler. And I'll leave it at that.
Could somebody grab my husband? Thank you.
Okay, so our next item is, we're going to move into the delegations now. I have no mayor's report to give today. And our first delegation is from the Tofino Poet Laureate Working Group. And I'm not too sure who is speaking. Janice is speaking. Welcome, Janice. So you have up to 10 minutes today to present, and we do have a timer. Yes, right here. So it will help me and it will help you. Thank you. And Mark, hello.
Mayor Osborne, District of Tofino Councillors. I'm going to begin with the final section of the poem Tribute by Tofino Poet Laureate Joanna Street. When the quiet voices grow loud and jubilant and signs of vitality spread across the land, when respect is freely given and the import of ancestry is openly embraced, when the language of the land is seen, heard, spoken, the Chinulth once more rises up, feathering the air with marks of tribute. The dedication of its maker a measure of art and teaching. Land and people as one, everything as one. Past, present, future, all dependent on our choices. The tread of our feet over age-old pathways, pathways of respect. Then that place of absence in us grows smaller, and life can flourish in the cracks, crumbling the barriers between us as people, between us and our sacred duty to this garden we call home, lifting us into high places of life before and life to come, bringing us into the wide and welcoming circle of everything as one. I'm Janice Lohr, a member of the Clayoquot Writers Group, and this is Mark Penny, the president of the Pacific Rim Art Society. We're both members of the Tofino Poet Laureate Working Group, and we are here to present a request regarding the second year of the Tofino Poet Laureate program. I would like to recap the history of the Poet Laureate program for the benefit of new members of council. In June 2017, the Clayoquot Writers Group presented a proposal to the District of Tofino for a Poet Laureate program. The resolution made by Council on August 22nd, 2017 was, and I quote, that the district contribute matching funds up to $2,500 in support of a Tofino Laureate program, a Tofino Poet Laureate program from the 2018 budget to be funded through the Arts and Culture Grant Program. And that staff work with the Clayoquot Writers Group to develop a letter of agreement for the Poet Laureate appointment to be administered by a third party, end quote. As a result of this resolution, a working group was formed consisting of District of Tofino staff and representatives from the Clayoquot Writers Group, the Tofino Arts Council, and the Pacific Rim Arts Society. And the Pacific Rim Arts Society agreed to administer the program. In May 2018, the first Tofino Poet Laureate was appointed. I'd like to speak just for a moment then about the funding of the Poet Laureate program. An adequate honorarium such as that provided by Council for the first year of the Poet Laureate program allows the Poet Laureate to devote the necessary time to make this initiative effective and successful from both their and the district's points of view. It is also a reflection of the importance our community places on arts and culture. Both concretely and symbolically, adequate funding is an investment in the development of Tofino's arts, culture, and heritage sector with positive impacts on both the community and the economy. That's from the Arts and Culture Heritage Action Plan. A shared arts and culture stewardship role between government and community has been a model used in Poet Laureate programs in other jurisdictions, and this was the model used in the inaugural year of the Poet Laureate program. The annual honorarium of the Poet Laureate for the first year was $5,000, half raised in the community and half provided by the District of Tofino. The second year of the program also seeks an honorarium of this amount. And the working group already has commitments for over $1,000 toward the funding of the second year of the program.
Hi everybody, I'm Mark Penny. I'm the current president of the Pacific Rim Arts Society, and in our programming we look to do artistic-based activities and art forms to reflect the qualities of that particular community. When we were presented with the opportunity to get involved with the Tofino Poet Laureate program, for us it was really self-evident that poetry, that literature is a really good fit for the brand of Tofino. So the Poet Laureate's role is to really to give voice of the experience of being in Tofino. And it's such an incredibly diverse, eclectic group of people that's really hard to give voice to as an artist. So this year Joanna Streetley was our inaugural Poet Laureate, and she did an astounding job. It was really just amazing. When we picked her, we knew that she wasn't going to shy away from difficult issues. And she wrote just absolutely unflinching raw poetry towards the losses that our communities have felt in the last 2 years. We're so pleased with her body of work that's been generated and the number of appearances that she's made that we've elected to renew her as the Poet Laureate for the second year. And our request for the District of Tofino Council today is that they approve that extension of the program for the second year. So I want to thank you and I want to congratulate you for your involvement in this program. It's incredibly rare that a place this size has a Poet Laureate. So it really helps to establish us at the end of the road here. It's a great way to continue to form a narrative around your identity and to project that to the outside world. So, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Janice, for being here.
I would just like to add one more thing here. In terms of our requests, that that the District of Tofino match the funds raised by the community up to $2,500, which is half of the annual honorarium. And preferably not out of the funds allocated to the Arts and Culture Grant Program. In the spirit of the Arts, Culture and Heritage Action Plan, which seeks to advance the entire sector and provide greater opportunities for all disciplines.
Understood. Thank you. Just before you sit down, I want to ask if any members of council have anything to say or any questions to ask of our delegates.
You look like you want to say something.
We're both very good friends with Joanna Streetley, so it's almost, she's actually the godmother of my child. So I'm just smiling mostly because we appreciate the work that she has done. I do, for sure, and that I would like to see it continue in perpetuity if we could.
Yeah, we're definitely, multi-year funding is really important to arts organizations because oftentimes, particularly municipal funding is matched funding elsewhere. So your dollar gets about a 3-to-1 return on investment in the arts. So for us, it's really significant. It's billions of dollars in the province. Like it's a serious level of economics. Joanne Streetley's been amazing. In fact, she captured a Rainey Award this year, which is our prestigious award from Pacific Rim Art Society for outstanding accomplishment in the arts. So, that and her new book. So big successes for her this year.
Thank you.
Yeah, I try to kind of hold back. My question's more for council and staff actually, but thank you very much for the presentation. My question is about sort of where it goes from here, because I thought I'd wait and see what council kind of overall other members might be thinking, but to me it's either the budget process or an ask of staff if they've had any thoughts about this program in respect to the arts and culture master plan. And I did chair that on a previous council and delivered the master plan to council. So I'm very familiar with it and I want to see, just like we presume would support through our Department of Sustainability, the Parks and Recreation, how are we supporting arts and culture, and we're going to hear all about taxes in a few minutes, but I think that the community has stated this is a value to them as well, so to see what are our tools for financing. I'm just asking where this might go next.
I think the best place for this to go is our April 16th budget meeting, so that's just a couple of weeks away. Okay. And as our typical practice is not to make a financial decision based on one delegation that's come forward, and we do like the opportunity to look at the budget as a whole and to talk to our staff. I don't think we're going to have that discussion right now, but we can be ready, and we'll have that discussion on the 16th of April. And by that time, I think we'll know a bit more too about our council granting and arts and culture granting process too, because that, of course, the window for those has closed for this year, and then we'll be talking about where to go from there. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, but I think you're asking for funding for the 2019 year, is that correct? Yeah. So anyway, do you want a motion for discussion to happen on the request for funding support for 2019 at our April 16th budget meeting?
Thank you.
That's my motion.
All right. So it's being referred to there. Thank you. Seconded. Any discussion on that or questions from members of council? Okay, all in favor? Thank you, that's everyone. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for coming and talking to us more about it. Great, our second delegation is, I think a few people are leaving, so we'll just transition slowly. Our second delegation is from Jarmo Venalainen, and Jarmo, welcome. And you have up to 10 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I want to start my comments with, I'm not trying to be difficult. I want our community to work together, and I want us to make decisions in a knowledgeable way. The thing that got my attention was the 57% proposed tax increases in the draft budget. Now, if that doesn't get anybody's attention, that would be pretty weird, like really. Typical district tax increases are single digits. So what I've done is I had a look at our tax burden versus all of the other 162 districts in BC. The data, which button goes up and down? The data is available for anybody on the government website. It comes in a wonderful Excel spreadsheet. It took me about 3 minutes to make that graph. That's the address. If you want to know it, you can ask me as well. It's not necessarily super easy to find, but it is public, it is open, and it has records going back decades. That's Tofino. The only places that beat us are both ski resorts, which collect massive amounts of revenues because of those industries, Sundance and Whistler. Currently at about $19.31 per person. The provincial median is $7.50. Some municipalities like Burnaby have been prudent with their finances and earn investment income and are around $1,000. They have fentanyl issues and a whole bunch of things going on with tens of thousands, maybe even more than 100,000 residents. So it puzzles me why we would be there. It doesn't make sense. And that situation hasn't happened overnight. It took about 10 years. We used to have taxation of around $1 million, and now we're proposing to go to $6 million. To further hone in, I then looked at communities of similar size, because it's not right to compare us to Burnaby. I mean, we're not like that. These are the communities of similar size, and now we are at the top of the list. Jikulat is there, interestingly enough, and Sycamores. I haven't had time to investigate what the money is being spent on, but everything that districts do is public. They leave a public record, and all the information is available. We're here today. There's the median for districts of 2,000 people. This is where we're going in 4 years. Now you might think that's just numbers. The guy with the house pays for it. But even if you're paying rent, I calculated that your rent will go up between $50 and $100 a month, because the guy with the house is going to charge you the taxes. The thing that puzzled me at first is why nobody seems to be interested. The best conclusion I've come to, or opinion I should say, is because they simply, it's unfathomable, even like that possibility doesn't exist in the people's minds. It's just so out there. And again, I'm not trying to be difficult. It just poses the question of what is so unique about Tofino that we need to spend 5 times as much money per person than other communities. 5 times as much. All communities have sewers and roads and bylaws and all the elements that we have. All of them, every single one of them. Some of them have fentanyl crises with people dying once a day. We don't have that. We are the highest. And we're proposing to be the extremely highest. Why? 57% in the draft budget increase, as we speak. Now I will make, this is probably the harshest comment I make. I was very disappointed at the budget open house because, to be very blunt, the information presented was presented in a misleading way. One of the slides said, tax increase of 2%. That's simply not true. One particular element of the tax increase was 2%. There were 4 other particular elements, in addition to which the council decided to put in a 3% increase for their own wages just before the year ended. So, deceitful. I don't understand why we are doing this. What is it that we hope to achieve? I feel like I'm in the Wizard of Oz. The more I look, the more I find. And those are my sharp comments. It's just not open, transparent, and truthful. Period. There it is. we're going to break new records in British Columbia in a community that's already at the top of the list. We are not that special. We have roads, sewers, people, building bylaws. We have all the same things as all the other 162 districts of the province. Now, if we really are that special, then I think it's incumbent on the council to explain how. What value are we getting by paying 5 times as many municipal taxes as other communities? What is it? Personally, I will be looking, now that my attention has been taken to this. Last year, my attention was taken to zoning and smoke. I was not ready or willing or wanting to jump in here and let my attention be grabbed by something else, but 57%? Come on, guys. Deceitful, and that's a harsh word, information in a budget meeting, which only 41 people attended to because they felt there was no reason to attend it. Historical tax growth in Tofino. Those are the numbers going back to 2011 in hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you're a renter, 200,000 is equal to another 15 bucks of rent, roughly. It bounces around a bunch, so I did a sliding average. We've been at 9% per year, on average, for over a decade, and we're planning to continue that. If we compare that to the rate of inflation, then the multiples are 4, 6, 3, 8, 4, 5 times the rate of inflation. And I've been coming to Tofino for decades. I've lived here for the last few years. I don't see what happened with that money. Like, I can't see it. I don't see any low-cost housing. I see some pretty sidewalks. I see a trail in Tonquin, and there are things, there's a few low-cost housing things which may end up not so low-cost wherever lives them, but anyway, I just don't see it. There should be lots of stuff happening. There should be 3 buses running every 20 minutes with that kind of money. So 4.7 times higher than the rate of inflation as we speak, with the proposal to keep going. What is so special about Tofino? Please, I'm asking the question. The people that got elected are making the decisions, so tell me what's so special about it that we should pay more rent and more property taxes. Because if we are so special and we're getting something for it, then that's our community of choice. I mean, yeah, sure, we can choose to do that. Why is it 2.5 times higher than the median tax in British Columbia? Why do we need to break records to go even higher? I understand we need a sewer system, and recently we've decided that we want a gymnasium. Showed up around the election time. There's been talk of an ice rink and a pool for a long time. Most of the people have asked for a pool. Another group of people wanted an ice rink. I suppose somebody wants the gym, but I don't see a lot of public discourse with that. It just showed up. And I believe it involves hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars of community debt. Like, the district is about to indebt us, me, each one of us, with more than $30,000, our share of the debt, for which we will have to pay interest and principal until it's paid back. It's weird. That's why I'm here. I'm here to talk about it, because I don't know why people don't talk about it. Maybe because they can't fathom that it would be so. And I didn't go looking for this. I went looking because I saw a huge tax increase, and then I found this. That was the order of things. I'm not trying to be difficult. What have we been buying with all those millions? Tens of millions of dollars over the last decade. We bought something with them. I will be looking at what that is. Why do we need millions and millions more for infrastructure? We've always had infrastructure. We've always had to look after our infrastructure. Why do we need millions more all of a sudden? What happened? What's going on? That's it.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to share your perspective.
No questions?
We're not going to get into a debate here, so
Oh,
I think we'll-
most people
if
get
there's
asked
any-
questions, I never get asked questions.
any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. All right, thank you, Jarmo. All right, we're going to move on into the correspondence section of our agenda. And the first is a series of letters from the City of Victoria writing to us on issues that they have put forth to the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities Convention, policy resolutions that they hope will get advanced there and then go on to UBCM. So they've provided those to us for us to consider. For those of us who are going to ADICC as delegates, we have the opportunity to vote as we see fit, but they are letting us know what they think and how they feel. Any comments on those letters? No? Okay. The next letter then is from Domic from the Surf Canada, and he is asking for a letter of support for their application to Parks Canada for the competition. That's part of the bigger picture. I'm looking at Councillor Steer because he knows way more about this than I do. But what are Council's wishes?
I would support a letter of support at this time. I don't know if a motion for that is necessary at this point, or...
It will be in a minute,
Okay.
I think, unless anyone has anything else to say. Then I think let's go for it.
I'd like to, a motion to support, a letter of support to Surf Canada.
Thank you. All right, moved and seconded. Any other comment?
Yeah, just, what is the letter of support specific to?
To their special events application to Parks
Application.
Canada. So they're trying to show community,
Yeah.
regional
Thank you.
support for their
It's
application.
not that clear.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, all in favor? Thank you, motion carried. Okay, our next item is the correspondence from Willa Bradshaw, so Councilor McQuaid, you will, thank you. Thank you. So as Willa spoke to when she did her 2 minutes, this is the letter that just provides us some background with the proposed Taste of Tonquin Trail Feast event, and there was that one little change about not doing food stations on the beach. This is a special event permit application that will come to us at our next council meeting, is what I understand. Yeah. So at this point, I think it's for information, but if you had any comments or questions.
Yeah,
Yes.
I did. Thank you. I just recalled that because it came in as a letter, we don't have a staff report, but we do have a policy around the use of municipal facilities, and does that cover lands and so forth? I just want to be sure what our thinking is around.
Yeah, you may be referencing we have a policy with respect to the community hall
And this,
and how council chambers is used. I don't know, I don't recall if there's a policy.
anyway, I just want to be
But-
sure that
yeah, thanks for
when
the
it
heads
comes
up.
to council, that's kind of, if found or flagged in some way, that we can consider or reference it, so that we know if we're approving it, that we're approving it either despite that or because it supports what, either way it goes. But I just hope that the staff report can.
Yeah, to the best of my
Address that.
recollection, there's no policy around the use of public parks or trails.
For commercial
For-
events.
for-
and so forth.
yeah.
There's a process.
Yeah, but-
Okay. We'll
Okay.
find out.
Yeah, we
Thank
will.
you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments on the letter? No? Okay. Miss, maybe we could get Andrea back in. Councilor McQueen, thanks, Melanie. We door people today to help us. Thank you. Okay, then our final letter for consideration is correspondence from the Vernon Committee for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Day, and they are asking for our support in their petition, basically, to the provincial government to establish a Royal Canadian Mounted Police Appreciation Day. So would council like to support their request? Thank you. All right, would you like to put a motion forward?
I will put a motion forward to support the letter for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Day regarding our support.
Thank you. All right, so moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? None. Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to get into the reports section, or I think I want to call this the DVP section, the point where Aaron and Peter stand up for a long time. So thank you. So we have everyone else leaves. Goodbye. All right, so we have a series of reports today cleaning up some of the development variance permit applications, and we're going to start off with 1019 Jensen's Bay Road, the DVP application, and Aaron is going to walk us through this.
Pardon me.
That's okay. No, that's all right.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Today I have a number or two development variance permits to present, and Peter will present three. The first one in front of us today is for Mr. Latchford, who lives at Jensen's Bay, and it's a development variance permit for the siting of a caretaker cabin. The applicant is proposing to vary Tofino zoning bylaw 770. Again, this variance has reduced the required front yard setback as well as the side yard setback. The applicant did go through the board of variance process, but the board of variance didn't find hardship, and so the applicant reapplied for a development variance permit, and that's why we're in front of council today. Staff is supporting the variance. The siting does not affect the privacy of the surrounding neighborhood, preserves the character of that neighborhood. There's not a lot to speak to in terms of solar exposure. Again, privacy looks pretty good. It doesn't affect any neighboring properties, and we received no feedback from any adjacent property owners. So just a little bit of map just to explain a little bit better. So the property, you guys can't see, but at 1019 there in the corner where the arrow is pointing is where the cabin is proposed to be. It's quite a small cabin. If you look to the brown-purple slide, that represents the development permit for the Mike Flats foreshore area, and you can sort of see again where the property is located. It's a kind of a difficult property to develop because it gets covered by the DP. There's a very thin sliver of available property to be built on, and so again the cabin will be located in a triangular portion to the south. Again, we were notified as required by the local government act March 12th. If this proposal goes forward, or if it goes forward under another guise, it would still need a development permit prior to construction, and that would be to address any impacts to the wildlife management area, or that area. And that is that for that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Yes, question?
Yeah, but I'd like, if any other councillors have any questions to...
You don't want to be the first? Is that what you're
Every
saying?
time. Sorry, but...
No, it's okay. I mean, as there's our usual practice, this is an opportunity to ask Aaron questions kind of a technical nature, and then we will have the conversation ourselves as council about our feelings, and questions will invariably come up again too. Councillor McMaster.
Just in process, if we approve this, is that it for chance for the public input?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, from that, if it's approved, the applicant would apply for a building permit, and then it would go through that process. That would trigger the development permit. Development permits for this type would be required. We would require a registered professional biologist to comment on it, and we would take those recommendations to form the development permit. So.
I have a question, and Could you please just take a minute or two and just explain for the benefit of all of us again, and those of us who are newer, about the Board of Variance's role in the DVP?
So there's actually 3 ways to vary a bylaw under the Local Government Act. I won't talk about the third one because it's rarely if ever used. The 2 that are used most often are the Board of Variance process, and then there's Development Variance Permit. Development Variance Permit. Development Variance Permits come to council, and you can vary signs, subdivision requirements, zoning, parking. You can't vary use and density. It comes to council, the council decision. That's DVPs. Board of Variance goes to the Board of Variance, which is a 3-member panel appointed by council, and their one role is to provide variances for hardship. And I'm going to put hardship in quotation. It's not defined in the Local Government Act. It's not cash. I don't want to develop here because it costs too much money. What's intended to do is allow people to develop property if, say, they had half of their property was encumbered by a cliff. So they couldn't actually build what they wanted to because the front setback was too far in. The cliff comes here, and they don't want to build a 3-foot wide house. It could be for streams. In this case, there's no natural features that the Board of Variance could. There was nothing that the Board of Variance could come up with that was hardship, and so they declined to issue the variance. When applicants come to staff, we try to steer them in what we think is the most appropriate direction, but applicants are allowed to choose what they want, and various bodies, yourselves, and the Board of Variance can make decisions under their authorities.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about that? No? Okay. Councillor Bird?
Councillor Anderson had it.
I did,
Yeah, okay, sorry. I'm just not
Councillor
quite
Anderson,
ready.
Are you, okay.
I'm just wondering, what's the development permit process that would be required if this was approved by council?
So the applicant would, again, apply for a building permit, would trigger the development permit. The applicant then apply for a development permit. They would fill out an application, pay the application fee. We would ask them to go and hire a registered professional biologist. That biologist would look at our guidelines for that area, for the wildlife, for the WMA, and then create a report based on that, on the ecological issues that may be impacted or may not be impacted, and how to mitigate those. We receive that report, review it, take the recommendations from the biologist, put them into the development permit, ask the applicant for security, usually depending on something like this, probably about $1,000. The applicant goes, does the building. Once everything's done and finished, they ask the biologist to come back. The biologist gives us another report to signify the work's being done, and then we give the security back.
Okay, Councillor Bird?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Erin. So I did, there were so many of these development permits. I actually drove around to each address to try to kind of understand, and indeed, as it says in the report, it's not that impactful. It's actually a small unit, but it's kind of, I think it's on wheels because it's waiting for the building permit to put a foundation on, because it otherwise looks like a trailer. And
if I could speak to that, this is a conversation we had with the applicant about it wanting to be on wheels, but it will be on a foundation if this is approved.
Right, okay, thank you. And in allowing vacation rentals, and you referenced that there was a vacation rental operating but without the necessary requirements, so I'm presuming that this would, if it got the variance and did get the building permit, would be used in some way to come into compliance. And I guess I have 2 questions about that, or one maybe, but do we have anything that is specific that I can't recall that we do, but when we say that there has to be a year-round resident on site, that resident isn't necessarily a caretaker of the property. This is just a name, caretaker's cottage, but it kind of can trick one to think that it's caretaker for the site, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a second dwelling. Minimum size, where are we at with, because we're in this building bylaw change and everything around minimum size this would not qualify as minimum size in the existing bylaws, I think. So I'm just wondering about that.
So in the Part 4 changes, which I expect to have to council at the next meeting, so we've been holding off on that report for about a year and a half to deal with other issues. That's going to come to council on the 9th. That bylaw will reduce minimums for buildings, or sorry, eliminate minimum buildings, so you can build whatever size suits you at the time. And so by the time we get around to a building permit for this, that should line out. If it doesn't, for some reason council doesn't decide to read that bylaw, then we'd have to have that conversation with the applicant to make sure that the building that they expected to put in there is fit.
Okay, just for the record, I'm completely not in agreement with that policy, but we'll come up to that in a different point. So the other concern I have is about vegetation. Right now there is a rib, and this, by the way, I'll be speaking to in each of the applications, but a ribbon of vegetation between that unit and Jensen Road. So do we have any tools to ensure protection of that setback area for vegetation, screening and so forth? Because, you know, moving things around and mass in the project, but there's this kind of neighborhood kind of character that has a lot of green space and screening and that kind of thing, and just making sure that that's somehow protected.
So the best tools we have for vegetation protection now are is Part 7 in the zoning bylaw, which is landscaping, which doesn't really apply in this case. The next best thing we have is development permit areas, such as the WMA one in which this building is proposed to be located. We don't yet have a tree protection bylaw or vegetation removal bylaw. That would be probably, probably one of the better tools to have. So if you can actually touch ground or move trees or cut down trees in a DP without getting a permit. So the applicants come forward to ask for this, and we'll go through the process. If in the future someone decided to cut down trees in a DP area or dig into their area without permission from the district, then we would have to look at our options for enforcements, which would be basically provincial court at that time.
So in terms of, let's say the council were to say, yes, we would approve this variance on the condition that there be some protection or covenant on this green space. Is that a possibility, or?
I think this council's wishes to,
yeah.
If they,
okay.
I
just
have a picture if that will help.
Wondered about that. Thank you. That's it for questions.
Okay. Councillor Anderson had another question.
Yeah, it says the proposed siting is within the boundaries of the Tofino Mudflats Wildlife Management Area. And I'm just wondering, do the boundaries of the wildlife management area extend from the water side or the other property bound? Both.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
And
30 meters either side.
so does this management area have any protections on vegetation involved in it, or would there be requirements falling out of the development permit process that might require that?
So protection of
Of vegetation?
Yes, this is exactly that. So a biologist will come in and look at the property and look at the guidelines we have, which are for the protection of the mudflats area, and then make recommendations based on what the applicant's proposing and based on our guidelines. In this case, the proposed building is in an area has already been cleared at some point, and so I don't believe there'll be any trees coming down again. I'm not sure because I haven't seen the development permit application, but that's my assumption and what the applicant has let us know.
Can that process happen before we grant a variance? Because I mean, I'd kind of like to see the results of that before we variance.
Yeah, it's for sure. Council could ask council could withhold their decision and let the applicant know that they'd like to see a DP in place first.
Okay, I just want to point out that the applicant is in the audience today, and if council wishes to give permission for him to speak, I think he can actually speak to this, so.
Sure. I would just say one last thing for that.
Yeah,
it gets very awkward because usually people don't want to go through the process of hiring all the, while just getting your building plans, which is quite expensive, and going through the process, and then come back to council for the variance. So the way it usually works is, as it is today, and has in the past, is DVP to make sure they can do what they want to do. Then they apply for building permit, go through that process, and then the development permit has to get issued first.
Yeah.
So there is an order of operations. It's not that you can't do it, it just becomes very onerous for.
Yeah, I appreciate that, yeah, thank you.
Can I ask you a question about that, though? Would that
Yeah.
also be true of, say, a hotel or resort property? Would they be required to bring this information forward or expected to, more or less? Because
It depends on the process. Like in the zoning, you're going to see this right off the bat before any building permits, before any variances, because we're in a zoning process. We're in a development variance permit process, which is something completely different. And in our practice, and for sure in the last 11 years, this is exactly how it's being done every time. The development permit process works really, really well. We have professionals tell us how to protect our land. We have security that we hold. We have guidelines that we created. And then we make sure that the applicants follow through with the follow-up. So
Right.
if they don't do it, we ask them to remediate. If they don't remediate, we take their funds, and we've done this, to remediate for them. So that's the process.
And what you're saying is that by granting the variance first, then that whole process can get triggered. But I hear the discussion here, which is there work to be done first? But I think we might get some clarification from the applicant that could solve us or save us from a bunch of discussion we don't need to have if council's willing to hear from the applicant. It's not our typical practice, but.
I'm happy
Okay.
to hear from you.
So does anybody disagree? No, okay, so then by unanimous consent, I think we can ask a couple questions of the applicant who's sitting in the audience.
Okay.
Andy?
Sure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks. Aaron, good work.
I have a picture, just so, I think you were asking what it looks like, so.
Thanks, we have some pictures in our report as well, but thank you. So, Councilor Bart, did you want to ask Andy your?
no, actually, my question was
Okay.
more for Aaron about, what when we have things that come to council from somebody who's running a commercial operation, like a resort and so forth, there are certain things in
Right.
line. This is technically a residential property, but it's being run as a commercial operation, and it's kind of, I think it's a fair question because of the mud flat question, that we have a high level of comfort around that. And if, the discussion around remediation, we said, well, the place is cleared already. Sorry, but, what if the report of the mud flat says actually that should be remediated, not have a house there, do we want to do the variance? That's.
I see, okay. Got it.
But I mean, generally, I when I look at it at the surface, I have no issues with it beyond that. But.
Development permit isn't to restrict development, it's just to manage development.
Right.
So we expect people who are going to be building in development permit areas, we just want to make sure they have to go through an extra lens of professionalism, of review, and that's what they're for. So it's not intended not to build something. And one other aspect for council to consider is that we're not talking about whether this use is allowed. Again, we've had this conversation before. A cabin is permitted in this property. What we're talking about is the siting of that cabin and the limitations of that property based on that. So just to clarify that we're not, I think Councilor, I understand where you're coming from, but just that we're talking about siting rather than use, although they can be related.
Yeah.
Okay. So does anyone have any questions for Andy?
I can't say I've worked in cooperation with the district from day one to get it right. In fact, that's the second one I've built because the first one didn't conform to the building codes. Started again. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm just here to participate and then be compliant.
Thank you. That's great. All right. Okay. So, thanks. Have a seat.
Okay, thank you.
All right. What do you want to do?
I will say, I would rather it be pushed. The picture is actually not where the variance is being applied for. Where they've asked it to be put was a response to Dana's recommendation, what she felt they could recommend. But as you can see, there's room to even go further.
Right.
That
Okay.
actually would be less disruptive to the neighbors, I think, the further
Okay.
out.
Thank you. Okay. So do we want to turn our minds to the DVP then?
I'll move the recommendation.
Is there a second there?
You get to read it all.
I'll second. Then I get to read it out, that's what you're saying, yeah, that's fine. All right, so it is moved and seconded then that council approves Development Variance Permit number 05-19 to vary District of Tofino zoning bylaw 770, 1997 for Strata Lot 30, District Lot 274, Clackwood District, Strata Plan VIS 4584, together with an interest in the common property in proportion to the unit entitlement of the strata lot as shown on Form V as follows. To vary Part 18.6.1 of the District of Tofino zoning bylaw 770 to reduce the minimum front yard required in an RA1 zone for a caretaker's cabin from 12.2 meters to 6.36 meters for the proposed building as shown on Exhibit A to DVP 05-19, and to vary Part 18.6.2 of the District of Tofino zoning bylaw 770 to reduce the minimum side yard required in an RA1 zone for a caretaker's cabin from 4.5 meters to 1.5 meters for the proposed building, again as shown on Exhibit A. That's the technical legalese part of it, and what we understand is that we're varying the setbacks to allow the construction or insertion of a caretaker's cabin, and that the development permit would be applied for if the variance is granted. Okay, any questions about this? All in favor? Thank you, none opposed, motion carried. All right, on to the next part. All right, so I'm going to pass this over to you, Councillor Chalmers.
Thank you.
And this will take more than 30 seconds. I'll go upstairs.
So we are on to our second development variance permit. This one is for Hotel Z. Hotel Z is located where the old James Rainforest Inn used to be. The applicants are proposing or have applied to demolish the pub building and the staff housing for the development of a new hotel in front and the associated parking and staff housing. Just sort of the background.
Could I ask, maybe if the lights went out or something? I'm really having a very hard time reading this screen. That, great, thank you. It's better. Yeah, it's good. Maybe it's a thing about the angle of it or something.
Okay, so again, this applicant is looking to vary the zoning bylaw. In this case, it's for parking, and specifically parking in the front yard, as well as a relaxation of the front yard setback to allow parking within it. Just a little bit of a background that if you look at the property today, you might not realize, but the property actually, the parking actually extends into the Ministry of Transportation's right of way into the Highway 4. As part of this process, we'll be pulling the parking back, and so the end result of that is the parking will actually be moved back further than it's actually located today. So even though we're going to be reducing the setbacks, we're going to be putting the parking back at the same time. So we expect that the application will improve the buffer between the existing parking and the multi-use path and highway. We think that this development permit, on balance, will protect significant forest and old forest to the rear of the property that's not within the development permit area. There's design and siting won't really change. There'll be a new building in front, but it's in roughly the same location. The current property as it exists doesn't actually meet the C5 zone. It may have been built before the C5 zone and may have been improved on, but it doesn't meet the C5 zone now, so this is an opportunity for us and the applicants to bring the property into compliance. We think that, again, this will reduce the impacts from neighboring properties, at least from the highway. And we did solicit feedback from the neighborhood, and I believe we received 4 or 5 letters, which was distributed to council. We had 1 in favor, 3 for sure not in favor, and one of those letters, the one from Ms. Shimko, and we've spoken to her since and has let us know verbally, let Peter know verbally that she can understand the proposal, but is now doesn't have an issue with it, but not support or trees support. So that's just one follow-up that council doesn't have yet. So just a sort of bit of a picture to give you guys an idea of what we're talking about. The, obviously this is Jamie's Rainforest Inn. The yellow line along Suburban Highway is the property line, and you can sort of see where the existing parking encroaches onto that area. So that will all be pulled back as part of this process. There were 3 options that were presented by the applicant, and to give you the proper context, this property is not encumbered by a development permit at this portion of the property. It is zoned for what is being proposed, and so if the applicant chose to, and this is not being part of the conversation, this is not how they've approached it, but if they chose to, they could build a parking lot in the back tomorrow and move on with the process. They would like to save the forest in the back, and this is why we're in front of council today. Is the development variance permit is to be able to protect that, those trees.
Aaron, could you go back to the previous slide? All this green space and their property line, I guess that's the yellow toward the mud flat.
Yeah.
How much of that property is in the mud flat zone? You're coming to it?
Yeah,
Okay,
I have a slide, I think 2 slides up that will show that. So there were 3 options presented to staff by the applicant. Those are in the report. Staff supports option, we call it option 1, and that would allow for parking in the front yard, a 2-meter setback from the lot line for parking, and a 0-meter setback for the drive aisle. So basically you have a lot line, drive aisle, parking, and just remember that it would all be moved back from where it is currently. The other options were a 2-meter setback for parking and the drive aisle, and a 6-meter setback for both parking and driving aisle, which would mean they wouldn't need the variance for the relaxation to the front yard. Both those options would potentially mean that would potentially have the applicant have to remove trees to the rear of the property. And so taking that into account counts the staff is supporting option 1. This is not a great view for you, but if you look at the drawing, the highway is to your right. If you're looking at that TV, and you can sort of see where that circle is roughly where the old staff housing would be. Sorry? No.
Highways on the bottom.
Sorry, highways on the bottom.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. That's where the parking would be extended, and so if you look at the options 2 and 3, that parking gets extended quite a bit of the way back. And I have those options later in the presentation. There's the development permit area. So you can see that's the WMA. This is the same DP that we were talking about. And you can also see there's quite a large gap between where that is and what else is on the property between that and the hotel. Again, went through a notification process, notified the community about it. We received the responses as previously communicated to council. Some of those concerns, a summary of those concerns with noise from vehicles, lack of future protection for the mud flats wildlife area, and a compromised buffer for the mud flats WMA. And I believe these are speaking to the fact that that portion of the property between the mud flats and where we're talking about now is currently unprotected by any means. It's just open land open for development. There was a response from Mrs. Lukes and Mr. Wickham about postponing the decision today by council to the next meeting, so that a conversation that I understand is currently occurring can run its course. And I think Mr. Wickham and Mrs. Lukes have approached the applicant and are working through a possible solution to their concerns, or at least to mitigate some of their concerns. So that is, I think you guys recognize that, that's in the letter. And that would be that. These are the other options. You can see how, depending on how far back you push the parking in the front, it just pushes parking back in the back. And that most likely will be removing full of trees.
Any questions or comments?
have a question and a comment in the, so as it stands, the conversation with the, if we can go back to the mud flat area where the setback there, there is no, the protection of that area, if we grant this variance, tomorrow or the next property owner has every right to continue to develop that area. So there is no real protection other than the word that by granting this variance, we won't encroach on that, which is their right to do. So that is correct, right?
That is
Yeah.
correct, and there's something that we had discussed with the applicant about whether they'd be interested in the covenant to sort of back end this, and at the time they were just not interested.
They weren't
at that
interested
time.
at that time. And so with the letter from Mr. Wickham and Mrs. Woods, the conversation might look at a sort of conservation, for lack of a better description, agreement or a heritage that they're entering into a negotiation or a discussion that could include a more robust protection of that forested land.
As I understand it, yes, but I have not had a conversation with either party, and I don't really know what they're talking about. I'm not sure what mechanism they may use to protect that, whether it's a agreement between the two property owners or whether it's something that goes on title. I just don't
More
know.
formalized.
Yeah.
But as it stood, the covenant was not in the discussion phase. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Sarah. And, I think the change of ownership to the Hotel Zed met with a lot of enthusiasm in the community, and Mandy did go around, sorry, I'll use your first name, but did go around and see a lot of business owners and so forth with a sense of trying to understand kind of Tofino and its values and so forth. And I think the letter from the Wickham Loucks party absolutely kind of states those values. And we ask always for these letters or this feedback from neighbors. We don't always get it. And so from my point of view, I think for a couple of reasons. One, because they are neighbors, but also because of that larger question of the community values. There was a lot of effort went into creating that mudflat protection zone. Tremendous effort to make that happen and to have it declared a World Heritage Site. And I think the community sentiment is that, well, that's good, we want to be as robust as possible in the full kind of slate of protections that can happen. And if there's a willing neighbor to bring good ideas that could advance this project, then I'm inclined not to support this, to postpone it until those conversations have happened and that it comes back to council to understand why or why not these are good ideas. But certainly, this idea that, well, if we don't get what we want, we can just go and clear all these trees, which I'm not hearing that that's the language, but that's the interpretation. I think they know well that that's not going to work in their favor, just in the sort of court of public opinion. So, there's motivation in everybody's part to find a solution. I'd like to see that come back to council as early as possible, but I'd like to not support this until the concerns of the neighbors have at least been addressed.
Thank you.
I agree. I think we need to respect the neighbourhood, and I'm happy to see this deferred.
Can I ask, to the extent that the letters have been provided, the engagement on behalf of Hotel Zed, is that an interest they have? Because while I'm willing to engage the neighborhood and defer for 2 weeks, if one party is willing to have the conversation, both need to be in the room.
I understand that as late as last night, they were having conversations.
That was my impression. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't deferring something.
Would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, sure, I'll do that. Thank you.
Can I speak as to what our conversation ended on last night?
Do we need to make a?
Council, usually by unanimous consent if council wants to hear from an applicant, as happened moments ago.
Is anybody against it?
I guess I'd be interested if there had come to some resolution, or if it's just something that's in process. So I'm willing to hear from the parties.
By unanimous consent? Yes.
Great. So last night we met and we had a great conversation, and both parties, Trevor, Lauren, and myself, we all have the same objective, which is we want to protect the mudflats and the sanctuary, the bird sanctuary. What I don't want to happen is I don't want to be the one person signing a covenant and then have all the properties around it developed. So what I'd love to do is to try to encourage others in the mudflat area to join Trevor, Laura, and I in signing a covenant. So what we agreed upon last night was that if we could get 3 owners in the vicinity, that we would all sign. And so that's how we ended it last night, and it was very agreeable. You know, and I think it was the beginning of a really lovely alliance between us, and we hope to encourage others. Trevor did come to me just right before this meeting started saying, oh, wait a second, he had assumed one of those other owners was the District of Tofino, so now he was a little unsure. But I still would like to maintain that if we can get 3 owners together, you know, and I state this before council and before everyone, so, you know, I'm good to my word. If we can get 3 owners, so we've got 2 for sure now, that the 3 owners would then sign a covenant.
Okay, thank you.
I think Mandy says is very true. We had a great conversation, and I think we have a very similar vision. We wanted, and we agreed that there would be, provided we could find one additional property owner to join the covenant, that we'd all sign on, absolutely. We assumed that the district would look upon this as a real favorable item, and that their land that abuts the north end of the bay would be quite possibly the next covenant signer. Unfortunately, we found out at about 8 o'clock this morning that the district doesn't own land on the water. It's further back. So I've asked Mandy to take her rider off and sign collectively with Laura and I a covenant that doesn't have any restrictions, with the absolute proviso that we're going to immediately start talking with the Striegels, the people at the Wickaninnish, because those are the property owners in question, and you know, with the idea of having a contiguous piece of forest protected. That said, those conversations take time. We were, I think, you know, we kind of wrapped up at 8:30 last night, so it's exciting, and I think it's timely, but it does require a few more conversations. I don't want to, nor does Laura, want to make it difficult for Mandy to achieve what she wants to do, but I think that the forest protected in the first instance is going to make the whole process a lot more easier.
Thank you.
We would like to move forward with getting our building permit in order to open as soon as possible, but we are committed to working on forming an alliance, but we do not want to seek any more delays.
Thank you.
And I have an agreement here, and all we have to do is sign.
Okay, thank
But
you.
that's for 2 owners.
Thank you, we won't get into debate right now.
Maybe just add one piece of clarification. If there was to be an agreement between 2 or 3 property owners, the district will probably want to be involved in the writing of that, the drafting of that, and so we can consider what exactly we're protecting, how we're protecting it, and what area we're protecting. Is it 10 meters from the is the whole thing. So just for council to understand that if this goes forward, the district will need to be involved at a staff level to understand what's going on, and to determine whose name's on the bottom of that covenant. If it's 2 property owners, and it can work with 2 property owners, but it always works better with a municipality being responsible for the discharge of that covenant. So, yeah, the parties may not be amicable to that either.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask to the extent that that would delay this permit?
There are people talking to people, so it could take, I'm going to say, realistically, at least a month. These things don't tend to move faster than that with, everybody getting together, agreeing. It can, if everybody's in agreement, it can probably happen in 5 days, a week. In my experience, these things, there's a lot of little paths you have to go down and come back out of and go back.
We don't have a third party though, so it could take a long time.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Councillor Bradshaw.
Yeah. Thank you for that, and then really for your efforts, both from the Laura and Trevor who wrote the letter. There's also concerns from other neighbors too, although you mentioned some conversation that happened.
With one of them, with
one of them.
Ms. Shimko.
Anyway, I didn't quite get that, who was having the conversation and what was being addressed. I didn't.
Ms. Shimko contacted Peter, and Peter explained the process and what she understood, what the variance was actually for. She withdrew.
Okay, and then there's a third letter and one of support. Okay, so anyway, the question in the report to me was, because I had understood from earlier conversations also that this protection of the bird sanctuary, the mudplots and all things was kind of a sort of a priority. And staff put forward the idea of the covenant, the variance, much more the process, we get the covenant and everybody's kind of satisfied with getting what they need. So I was more inclined to say, well, why not the covenant? Is get the variance permit, the area is protected, and now there's a second party willing to sign in. We have to, it has to start somewhere on that property, and I'm just, without knowing those protections are in place, I'm very, very concerned about just.
And from staff's perspective, it's very black and white in the sense that in a zoning process, which this is not, we could quite easily insist that there be a covenant of protection through a negotiation with an applicant. In a development variance permit, we just don't have that. We can ask and inform and have a conversation with that people. We can't make them do it. And that's basically where we got to. So the staff is presenting, we think, the least worst option, so that we protect trees without an agreement by restricting parking, by allowing parking in the front. And that's sort of black and whiteness of staff. We don't have a lot of room to negotiate. There maybe sounds like there's something happening outside of our process, which is great, and something we'd be really interested to be involved with. But apart from that, this is our recommendation.
So if I may ask, again, another question. You talked about the C5 zoning and this existing zoning. So what would you see as happening around that? This is a time to rezone in terms of what we're talking about today.
I mean, an applicant can decide to rezone if they choose. The C5 zone allows them to do what they wish to do, so they have no requirement for them to rezone. Obviously, we don't talk about it much, but council can zone properties. It's nothing that we've ever done or ever talk about, but that is a potential.
Right.
But in this case, there's no zoning application. There's no need to do it.
Well, I'll just say to council, I'm inclined to support it, subject to the resolution around the covenant issue that prior to execution or something like that. It's not a motion yet.
I think we're sort of in a position where we have a property owner that's quite willing to work towards full protection, but also in the meantime a proposal that offers not to remove some of that vegetation that is the center of the discussion, I think. And I think it takes a bit of a leap of faith at this point that will happen. I sort of imagine a scenario that another property owner could have bought the property, would have not been willing to do any of that. And and been able to have removed the trees and developed to their full zoning potential. So I'm inclined to, while I agree with Councillor Bard that I'd like to see a little bit more in place before fully moving, I'm inclined to take that leap of faith given what the property owners come forward with, given that we could have been in a much worse scenario. So that's what I have to offer. I do have one question though, that the former developer put their parking into the highway boundaries, and I'm just wondering what covers that off? Is that normal? That should have been caught maybe by a building inspector, by highways, I don't know.
Probably by highways. We don't issue building permits for parking lots. We tend to be a bit more proactive than we have been in the past. But you know, if you'd asked me before this report where that line was, I would have assumed it was closer to the ditches rather than as far back as it is. So, I don't know when it happened. I don't know if it was in the 80s, 90s, 5 years ago. I'm not quite sure. I'm suspecting it was about 5 years ago.
Okay, and then, so I imagine when that happened, also we have some OCP policies with no teeth to them, but around buffering along the highway and trying to save that green corridor. And I don't know if there was great buffering in place before that, but there was some. Some was removed, as I recall. And I'm wondering if there's any opportunity at this point to try and enhance and improve that green buffer. Since the presumably some landscaping will be done when the parking lot's pulled back.
So as I understand it, there was actually a complaint when it was by the previous owner was expanded and removed, and we looked at the landscaping portion of the zoning bylaw at that time, and it actually allowed for what the applicant had done. They hadn't asked, but so that was a complaint received, but there's nothing that we can do about it. It's my understanding that the applicant is willing to do some landscaping along that side. I'm not sure, and I have to defer to Peter to ask this question. With a 0 lot setback for drive aisle doesn't leave a lot of room on their property to landscape, and so I would understand it would have to be an agreement with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure because it's their property rather than ours, and we might have to vary our own zoning bylaw to permit that.
Oh, okay. Sounds kind of complicated.
I think I'm prepared to take a leap of faith. The property owner has been, ever since they bought the property, has talked about preserving trees and what they value in that property, and I wouldn't like to see them delay too much. I hope this doesn't come back to haunt me, but I think we should approve it as it is.
I would just like to, this leap of faith is always, because I feel caught between a rock and a hard place here. So I am going to probably move in that leap of faith, but I do have to state that I am uncomfortable with the negotiated process of how this is developed. That being said, this is in a sense the best of the options that are being presented to us. In the sense, I'm just curious, and this is not a question to the applicant at this point, but the insistence upon a third party. I do know the property to the south end. I live very close to this area, not in the adjacent, but it is. There are properties for sale in that area. I think and I don't know to the north side of Trevor there, the ability to negotiate a third party involved in this, and the reluctance to not just be involved with a second party. This is not a question at this point. It's just to state that it's a concern of mine. That being said, I will move forward with the leap of faith and support this as option number one.
Councilor Bear?
Yeah, thank you. So partly what to me is driving a lot of this discussion has to do with the development itself. It's increasing the need for parking and the number of units. According to the letter from Wick and Lugs, it's tripling. we have, you know, we have issues about water capacity. We've discussed that with, you know, different kind of aspects of council. We have concerns, and it's expressed in our OCP process about development and the community saying, you know, enough already. This is, you know, until we get some balance here in things. But you're saying this, unless they, well, even that would be a variance, but they can build as long as they're on their footprint, allowable footprint, build as many units as possible. So in terms of what you've shown us on the map, where are these 91 units going to be? Are they all, I recall you referring to the building footprint. How much more of this land is actually underway being taken? Because of this development, we need more parking, right? And I couldn't read that, I'm sorry. It just...
I would have to defer to maybe Peter or the applicant, but I believe there's only an increase of about 40 units from what is there now. I don't know. It's 40 units.
It's roughly, yeah.
Approximately 40. And I think there's what, 90?
90.
Oh, like, when it's all said and done, it will be 91 units, and it is currently 42.
Yeah, and so these units are being built into this forested area?
So here, no. So if you look at the option one here, I'm going to easy to point it out, but this...
Sorry,
Maybe we finish this, but I maybe would like to ask council maybe to come back to, this is a development variance permit. We're not sort of re-adjudicating what their zoning is. They're looking to use land use rights that, you know, are in our zoning bylaw. And I appreciate if council wants to understand where things are going, that's fine, but I hope we're not getting into reconsidering zoning. I mean, we have a fairly simple, straightforward request here.
It is, and it's straightforward request, but I'm trying to understand what's happening on the property, because there was a suggestion by staff that they consider a covenant on some of the property, which they've declined in the way it was presented, but have said they would otherwise. So I'm trying to understand what's happening on the land, and I'm having a hard time with it. But basically, council has said conditionally they will. I'm not satisfied. I'll just, if they want to call the question, that's fine, but I won't support it the way it is right now without addressing the neighbors' concerns, and especially in respect to the covenant.
Okay, thank you.
I'll move the recommendation that council approve development variance permit number 0519 to vary district to Tofino zoning bylaw number 770/1997 for strata lot 30, district lot 274, Clackwell district strata plan DIS 4584.
Oxford?
Well, that's not what I want.
Yeah.
Council approved development variance permit number 0219 to vary district of Tofino zoning bylaw number 770/1997. Lot A. This is there. We're in agreement. District lot 132, Clackwell district plan 40527 as follows. A, vary part 6.7 of the district of Tofino zoning bylaw number 770/1997 to allow parking in the front yard in a tourist commercial district C5 zone as shown on Exhibit A to DVP 02-19, and B, vary part 6 of district of Tofino zoning bylaw number 770/1997 to relax the front yard setback from 6.0 meters to 2.0 meters.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Second. Call the question.
Just a question on the part B, to relax the front yard setback from 6 to 2 meters. Is that also to allow for parking? Because in part A it specifies parking, but part B it doesn't.
Yeah, they're both, the setback's reduced for the parking.
Okay, I would like to see the motion read that then, because without saying that, could they put a building or something other than parking?
I think it's appropriate to add parking.
Okay, I'd just move to amend the motion to add, in part B, to relax the front yard setback to from 6 to 2 meters to allow for parking.
Have a second here?
Second.
Okay. Call the question on the amendment?
In favor?
Okay, and now back to the question on the original motion with the amendment. Any questions? Okay, call a vote. All in favor? And opposed? Motion carried. Can I call a 2-minute break?
Well done on the amendment. You got the curveball by Councilor Anderson.
It doesn't matter, I'm in town.
Hey, Chris.
Let's say Thursday.
I'm not in town Friday, that's all.
Chris Lauer.
Thursday.
Lauer.
What time do you wake up?
I'm up at 7:30.
Right on, right, so I'm gonna call you in the morning. What's your phone number?
Mr. McPherson.
You know what this is about, I'm gonna ask you some comments about taxes.
Oh, for reason.
It's real. Yeah, no, I'll get like I heard. But I don't want to.
Everybody's always growing.
So far, what do you think about it?
I know tricks. Today, I've been studying up.
Yep.
So far, I looked at what the taxes are, next time look at what the
Is that a sleep yard?
I don't, I didn't understand that. I didn't want to say, oh.
Hey, Damon, could you crack that window, please?
Yeah.
So I'm going back into this room.
Now that the accordion's
Seeing
not
how,
playing
feeling how
outside.
boxed up he is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
When you were presenting.
If I could
That's
have
a question.
Property
value.
different option.
And tax rate. The tax rate is 70%.
What did you say?
It's like I don't want to look up.
One thing
I think we were doing it right, so they will have to consider
That.
Ways, there's a defect in any of them, then they're all.
I don't know, we're more like this.
saying that, and I know we need some tools.
Had they started going in that direction, then we could
Like that, because now it's happening.
When you leave. But just,
My time.
yeah.
You know, and everybody is so scared.
You kind of have one thing and you know you're going to get another.
Well, I think when we do,
Kind of the opposite. It's not that we don't trust you, it's that we don't trust you.
just because somebody can build.
This used to be a small town.
Well, that's what we've got in the United States, that's what I was trying to establish.
Fun for you, you get to watch some.
So, you know, it's just, I guess they've got to
Go back and forth.
that says that they can't do 91 units with that.
And then now that foundation.
Well, we don't have.
So,
No, they don't.
quiet
And if they don't have, then how is it that they have treat them like they open build?
our roads, sewers, water.
Yeah, one time. Yeah, they were, yeah, well, of course.
I realize that if I, like right now, I have and what this street is, I'll watch it later, it's still like, put it here for this.
You know, Wayne, my money will be
And then
I know, it's crazy now.
Yeah, and my thinking is
Yeah? Good, you got some good experience.
yeah, wits end, doesn't
And I
it?
can practicing my hands too.
Yesterday, I was
I'm
a trout.
I've never known it, I'll look for that now.
I'm a trout.
Did you want some?
Yeah, I just
So
really
if
did.
that third party, I don't know who's on the other side, and try to take the street.
Oh, is that, that's so much of that. Just like whacking on YouTube.
I mean, mind you, trees.
That's why I said come down here, like,
Right now it's just all bruised, but when it's
But this is unfortunate, because I could not read this thing. in this, You know, like,
The maps?
yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to.
So you can always ask staff to print it out on the 11 by 17. You just have to give them these notes, but it's totally possible. Absolutely. Yeah.
Seems like a new kind of map there.
Even if, yeah.
Yeah. That's a good piece of feedback. Okay. Peter Thick. Welcome to Tofino Council. And thank you for presenting to us on DVP 04-19.
Yes, we have 3 more development variance permits to get through. These ones are a little bit more simple, but there might be some more questions. The first one we're going to move through here is for Mr. Work at 1318 Lynn Road. Just so council is aware, Mr. Work is here and he has volunteered to answer any questions if you choose to speak to him.
Thank you.
If there's something that I can't answer. So this is a variance application to vary the District of Tofino zoning bylaw. The variance is to reduce the minimum required front yard for a caretaker's cabin from 40 feet to 25 feet. The reason for the request for this variance is that they are, again, looking to stay out of the undeveloped portion of the lot, which is the rear portion of the lot, still largely treed. And in order to avoid removing unnecessary trees, they're looking to place the caretaker's cabin in the front portion. So looking at some of the criteria, internal criteria, there is no major red flags. Generally preserves the form and character of the streets. A lot of the other houses in the area have a primary residence as well as a caretaker's cabin, or what we describe as a caretaker's cabin in the zoning bylaw. The intention is to build the lot out of the undeveloped portion of the lot, or pardon me, to construct the caretaker's cabin out of the undeveloped portion of the lot, and so in order to preserve a lot of the ecological function and natural topography of the lot. Not a lot to consider for solar exposure, but by putting it in the front of the lot, there generally will be a little bit more solar exposure as opposed to putting it behind the primary residence. And with regards to privacy and those sorts of things, they will be maintaining all buffers between neighboring properties. So there is no major concerns regarding privacy. Views, nothing much is going to change, and comments were solicited through the feedback process that we typically follow as mandated under the local government act. So this is the property. It's right in the center there. It's a little bit of a challenging image to see, but it's 1318. Currently there's an old building on there. That building is going to be eventually removed, demolished. I think at the moment it's been volunteered for practice work for the Tofino Fire Department. Eventually it will be removed, and the new building will approximately take over, the new primary residence, I should say, will approximately be located on that same footprint, with just to the front of it a smaller caretaker's cabin. So the notification went out on March 12th. There was just one response from one of the neighbors, and they stated they had no objections to the proposed variance. And that's about it for now, if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you. Yes,
Um,
Councillor Anderson.
I'm going to continue the musical chairs things and remove myself from the decision. This is my immediate neighbor, and
Okay, thank you.
yeah, and I didn't realize what.
Yes, this is,
Which DVP
this is
we're on, I would have-
Gord's formerly Gord's property. Since it's a small town and we all know everyone who lives everywhere in what house they owned it. Okay, anybody questions about this?
I think it seems to be fairly standard practice what's happening along Lynn and Chesterman these days.
All right, motion?
I'll move that council approve Development Variance Permit number 0419 to vary District of Tofino zoning bylaw number 770/1997 for Lot 3, District Lot 274, Clapham District Plan 24648 as follows. A, vary Part 18.6.1 of the District of Tofino zoning bylaw number 770/1997 to reduce the minimum required front yard of a caretaker's cabin in an RA1 zone from 12.2 metres to 7.62 metres for the proposed building as shown on Exhibit A to DVP 04-19.
Thank you. Seconded. Any comments or questions? All right, all in favor? Thank you, none opposed? Motion carried. Let's get Councillor Anderson back. Have a nice drive home to Victoria, Fraser. Thank you. Okay, our next DVP consideration is for the O'Keefe property at 1258 Lynn Road.
So just while the presentation's coming up, this is a very similar request for a variance permit. Just down the road at 1258 Lynn Road. Again, a request to vary the District of Tofino zoning bylaw number 770. The variance is to increase the maximum height for a caretaker's cabin from 20 feet to 26 feet. The reason for this variance application was that there's been some sort of marshy, boggy area in that property, and they're interested in putting it on a little bit of an elevated platform, not having just the standard slab-on grade foundation. So it's going to be up a little bit, and the variance will be from 20 feet to 26 feet. That will actually be that will be consistent with the upcoming Part 4 zoning amendment when it is adopted. So with that in mind, it's a fairly minor ask, seeing as where we are with Part 4. So again, looking at the interior, the criteria that we look at. Most lots, again, developed with a house and a caretaker's cabin along that street, so no major changes to the neighborhood form and character. There's no marked ecological features kind of where they're proposing to site the actual building, so no major concerns regarding ecological functioning. They did have to remove one fairly large alder tree, but I think that was about it. Design and setting should account for solar exposure. Again, it's in the front yard, so there'll be an increased amount of solar exposure as opposed to locating it, kind of behind the building or somewhere else. It's going to be a little bit higher up as well, so that should increase solar exposure. Creates superior siting with respect to privacy for neighbors. The neighboring property is fairly close to their side lot line, so they have a fence between the two properties. There's no major buffer. But my understanding is that it will not significantly impact or change the situation that already exists between those two properties. Also, all required setbacks, including the front yard setback, are being met in this particular case. The cottage will be clearly visible to their neighbors, but it should not impact their views tremendously, as that's not the primary line of sight from the neighboring property. And comments were solicited through the typical process. So again, here's the property. It's 1258. You can see the house just to the north, 1254, is quite close to their lot line. The location for the proposed cabin is just going to be in front of where you can see there's a little car there, and so just in front of there will be the location for the proposed cabin. Notification took place on March 12th. There were no responses, and that's about all I have. So
thank you.
If anybody has any questions.
Anything?
I'm kind of familiar with the property, I used to live at 1254. My only concern was the height, because I don't know of any marshy areas in the front. Have you looked at the property?
I did go and visit the property. This was what I was informed of by the applicant, and they'd spoken to a contractor that said that this would be the best approach to take, was to raise it up a little bit. I'm not sure if it's going to be on sonotube or pilings exactly, but my understanding is that was their reason for initially asking for this. And then when they realized that the Part 4 changes were kind of in progress, they kind of made the leap to think that this was a fairly minor variance to ask for, and that ideally within the next couple months it would be allowed under the zoning bylaw, but they were looking to get a bit of a jump start on the process and so apply for the variance.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I'll move the zoning recommendation. Make sure I have the right one here, 1258 Lynn Road. That council approved development variance permit number 619 to vary District of Tofino zoning bylaw number 770, 1997 for lot 2, District lot 132, plat of District Plan 51095 as follows: vary Part 4 112D of the District of Tofino zoning bylaw number 770, 1997 to increase the maximum permitted height of a caretaker's cabin from 6.1 meters, 20 feet, and 1.5 stories to 8.0 meters, 26 feet, and 2 stories for the proposed building as shown on Exhibit A to DVP 0619.
Moved and seconded. Any final comment or question? All in favor? Thank you. None opposed? Motion carried. Okay, your turn again. This is my name. I'll just leave this here, actually.
All right, and moving to our final development variance permit of the day. This one is 1092 Pacific Rim Highway. So again, development variance to vary the District of Tofino zoning bylaw number 770. The variance is to allow an accessory building to be located within the front yard. So the applicant is wanting to locate an accessory building just forward of the primary existing structure on the property. I think it's about a 2.6 meter encroachment into what we would describe as the front yard. So looking again at the internal criteria, preserving the form and character of the street area or neighborhood. Nearby lots are basically all developed with single-family homes. Many have caretakers' cabins or accessory buildings. There's also a visual buffer of trees between the property and the highway and neighboring properties, so it doesn't disrupt the natural form and character of the neighborhood. The proposed siting would also not require the removal of much vegetation. It's already a cleared area. And so as far as ecological function goes, there's no major concerns there. Designing siting should account for solar exposure. This isn't such a concern as it is a accessory building, not a habitable space. But it is kind of the front yard again, so it should have more solar exposure than if it was located to the rear of the property. With respect to privacy with neighbors, there are some significant buffers along the edges of the property, and from walking the property, it does not appear that there will be any major incursions of privacy to neighboring properties. Will not affect any of the views, and comments were already solicited through the typical process. So the property is again in the center of the screen. You can see there are already 2 dwelling spaces on the property, so the actual location for the proposed accessory building is going to be in the darker area just to the lower, I guess left while you're facing the screen of the front building there that's shaped like an M. Notification happened on March 12th along with the rest of these variance permits, and we received no responses from any of the neighbors.
Thank you.
I just had one. This is sort of a more general question, but it sort of flows out of me looking at the property, and it's come up before where, as we're going through a variance or an alteration to zoning or something, are all the other, do we know that all the other buildings are in compliance in terms of their setbacks and so on? And do we do any background before we move ahead with
So my understanding is that all the
changes?
houses that are on there right now currently have occupancy permits and have gone through the building process. As to whether or not they apply or they comply with current zoning bylaws, I can't really answer that one for sure because they may have complied at the time. Zoning bylaw may have changed, there may have been amendments. Currently, we're just considering the variance for this one building and not considering precisely where the setting of the other buildings are. That's not necessarily something that we do look into very much when it comes to considering the positioning of one of the buildings.
Tofino has a legacy of buildings that were built wherever people thought the lines on the properties were. So I don't know if this is even the proper point to check that out or not. But
yeah, well, we'd be happy to take a look. I think my understanding is for quite a while, land surveys were not required prior to issuing a building permit, and so as a result, we do have as you mentioned, a history of buildings being built where people thought the line was and not necessarily where it actually was. In this situation, I defer again to the manager of community sustainability if he has any comments, but right now what we are considering is just this one accessory building and whether it conforms or does not conform to the current zoning bylaws, and not necessarily the other buildings on the property.
okay. Well, I support the recommendation anyways, but it sort of brought that question to me.
Councilor Barton?
Yeah, thank you. I had a similar question about just how, how much that property is zoned for and allowed to have, and then, does the accessory building itself, comply? So anyway, you're seeming to be satisfied with that, but the other thing that is in keeping with what's been talked about before, because we did talk about there was some wording in your description here. Let's see, the visual buffers hiding the proposed building from neighboring properties and the highway. What in the development variance permit in terms of the wording will assure that this is maintained? Is there going to be language that does that?
So again, I don't know if within the development variance permit we have the ability or the jurisdiction to manage the removal of vegetation in areas that are outside of a development permit area or don't kind of come into compliance with a lot of the landscaping requirements in the zoning bylaw. So as we don't have a significant tree bylaw in place yet, there isn't a lot of protection. If needed, if desired, the property owners could remove the trees on that property.
And therefore, I'm not particularly motivated to, grant development variance permits unless I know that some of these higher objectives of the community, such as these protections of these buffers and corridors, are in some way assured. So again, I'm going to have to vote against this because I'm not satisfied that the interests of the community are protected. The applicant is getting something, and yet there's nothing to give comfort to the community that the things that are of high value from a community perspective are being safeguarded. And we don't have other tools. This may be, the only way to kind of negotiate that.
Any more questions? Would anybody like to make a motion?
So I'll take my turn. I'll move that, make sure I get the right line here, Keith's property, here. Move that development permit number 03-19 Jameson-1902 Pacific Rim Highway Report from community. The recommendation that council approve development variance permit number 0319 to vary District of Tofino's bylaw, zoning bylaw number 770-1997 for Lot A, District Lot 123, Clayoquot District Plan VIP 59940 as follows. A vary part 4.6-2H of the District of Tofino zoning bylaw number 770 1997 to allow an accessory building to be located within a front yard as shown on Exhibit A to DBP 03-19.
Second.
Call question? Call vote? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
Smells like apple cinnamon tea.
Yeah.
Smells real good. Okay. So our next item is the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund. And Keith is here to tell us a little bit more about it. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you. Thanks. Morning, Mayor and Council, and thank you for your time today. I'm here to ask for Council's official support in submitting an application to the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for $150,000 for tsunami risk mitigation planning. The proposed project will build on previous and ongoing work to evaluate and refine mitigation and adaptation options for tsunami risk for the District of Tofino and surrounding areas. A council resolution is required as part of the application process. So staff has called upon council on 6 other occasions to ask for resolutions to support applications to other streams of funding from the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, totaling $275,000, which have all been successful, including our most recent application for $25,000, funding for further emergency operations center training and supplies, which was just recently announced, I believe. So over the last 20 years, the District of Tofino has been working to mitigate the tsunami risk to our community. This work has included emergency response and evacuation plans, tsunami evacuation route mapping, signage and notification plans, and the installation of tsunami sirens. More recently, the district acquired LiDAR, which is detecting and ranging data in 2015. A 1.5 meter resolution digital elevation model was developed, and last year a multi-beam bathymetry project for Templar Channel was completed. So together this effectively creates a high resolution map of the ocean floor and how it transitions into the topography of our community, which helps us to better understand how flooding could inundate our community. So with that data, and with funding through grants, the district completed a coastal floodplain mapping exercise earlier this year and a comprehensive coastal flood risk assessment that is ongoing. And that helps us to identify what is at risk and what the consequences are. A community workshop was held with 24 stakeholders on October 26 last year to better understand components of exposure and vulnerability to coastal flooding. Participants range from BC Hydro to Surf Sister, Councillor McMaster. I was also in attendance. A second community workshop will be held at the Tinwis on May 9th. It's coming up shortly here. In addition, through a private contribution from Tofino residents, the district is working with the University of Ottawa and Waseda University in Tokyo on tsunami modeling and agent-based evacuation analysis that is helping us refine our current evacuation plan and identifying further opportunities for improvement. And with that same funding source, we are working with Northwest Hydraulic Consultants to perform a tsunami vertical evacuation scoping study, which is currently in the process of evaluating the need for such a structure in the Chesterman Beach area. So to date, what we understand from these numerous risk assessments is that even with the work that we've done over the past 20 years and are doing currently, there's still significant residual tsunami risk to our community, and more effort is needed to manage this risk effectively. So following the federal and provincial guidelines for risk mitigation, which consists of mapping hazards, which we've done, assessing risk, which we've done, and then developing plans to mitigate that risk, the district is now in the position to apply for funding to take a strategic approach to evaluating and refining mitigation and adaptation options for the tsunami risk to our community and surrounding areas. So this is a whole community approach to assess the appropriateness of a wide range of mitigation options across engineering, economic, social, cultural, and ecological indicators. Mitigation strategies will be refined with stakeholder and partner input. A project advisory group will be established to assist in refining strategies and options. Specific activities of the project include strategy development and phasing, engagement on strategy acceptability, review of strategies to increase acceptability, options development, options evaluation, options shortlist, life cycle costing and funding, strategy alignment, and an implementation plan. Tsunami risk mitigation planning is supported by Objective 2.1 of Tofino's emergency guide, which recommends the review of risk assessments and identification of mitigation options, working with stakeholders to identify criteria that should be used to select priority mitigation measures, such as feasibility, degree of risk reduction, legal requirements, cost, and potential for cost sharing among stakeholders. In addition, Objective 2.4 of Tofino's emergency guide recommends the development of a flood program and to define and prepare a mitigation action plan specific to reducing the flood risk to our community. And Objective 2.6 recommends evaluating future land use and development options in light of the tsunami risk and identifying suitable mitigation measures such as development of written guidelines, bylaws, and buffer zones for mitigating community risks through land use controls. So in sum, the District of Tofino has already started the important process of engaging with stakeholders on issues related to tsunami mitigation planning. Now, with increased understanding of flood hazards in the area, exposure of vulnerable areas, impacts and consequences, and with the addition of tsunami modeling, agent-based evacuation inputs, and a structural mitigation study underway, the district is better prepared to improve on managing the tsunami risk for our community. If received, the grant would fund $150,000, or 93%, of the $162,000 project cost. The District of Tofino's contribution would be $12,000 in kind in staff time. Moreover, if the application for the tsunami risk mitigation planning project is successful, the district will be able to apply for a subsequent round of funding in October of this year for up to $750,000 for structural mitigation projects through the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund. Thank you again, Mayor and Council, for your support of the program and for your time today. There's any questions?
Thanks. Yeah, any questions? When is if this was funded, when would you find out, and what's the timeline of the project?
Typically, it's about a month.
Right.
So yeah, so we could start this program probably towards the end of April,
right,
or maybe May.
And how long would it take?
They give you a year to complete the deliverables. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we go into sort of May of 2020.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anyone else? Please.
I'll make a motion that the staff submit an application for the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund at the amount of $150,000 in support of the tsunami risk mitigation planning.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. None opposed? Thank you. Thanks, Keith. Great work.
Yeah.
All right. The Emergency Program Executive Committee met on March the 1st, and there are some minutes for us to adopt. Adoption.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any questions from the meeting? Nope. Okay. All in favor? Thank you. None opposed? Motion carried. And now we have one matter under bylaws, and that's the District of Tofino Zoning Amendment Bylaw 1250-2018 for third reading. And this was what we discussed, or didn't, this morning at the public hearing that we had.
Move third reading.
Okay. Is there a second?
Do you want me to read?
All right, moved and seconded then that the District of Tofino Zoning Amendment Bylaw 1250-2018 be read a third time. Any final opportunity for comment? All right, all in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion is carried. There is no business initiated by council members, and so we have our question period, and anyone here up to 2 minutes on anything that we discussed today.
Mayor and Council, I felt bad after saying what I did in terms of its bluntness, so I wanted to apologize. Please listen to the information, not the emotion. I think really I am honestly interested in working the best of the whole community, and I believe you are as well. If I have given you some perspective, then I feel successful, because at the end of the day, we live here all together. I like the ends of these meetings because it's just us. Honestly, really, I know I'm known as a difficult person by some people. I've been told so. That's not my intent. I'm trying to communicate something and I'm doing the best that I know how. And you can know that I will continue to do that. And I'd rather not play games with accusations of having 5 bedrooms in my double wide and shit like that. I would just like to talk issues. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you for this.
Thanks, I appreciate that, and thank you for caring and coming and putting your perspectives forward. Anyone else? Andrew Bailey?
No, good meeting.
Whoa, 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 no questions for us?
No, I have nothing. You guys nailed it.
I feel almost disappointed.
All the information I need.
All right, would somebody please make the motion to close the meeting?
That the meeting be closed to the public pursuant of sections 91A(c)(e)(1 of the community charter to discuss matters relating to personal information about an individual who holds or is being considered for position as an office employee or agent, labor relations or other employee relations, the acquisition, disposition, expropriation of lands or improvements, and the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege.
Thank you. Seconded? Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. All right, should we just take a minute break here and wait for
I have some notes.
the room to change?
Yeah,
and-
32, but I have no idea where they are.
I'm doing all right.
So are you reading them in the office right now?
Just the agenda, or you go?
Depends on.
I have some notes.